Coming up, lower your Brooklyn Nets flags to half-mast. Bojan Bogdanovic is no more. But we get Killian Hayes. Oh, baby, what to expect from all the moves Brooklyn made. Coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast. We're in the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armick. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And Doug, God, man, we spent a lot of time, including you, solo, doing the Lord's work, talking about what has been the numbers, the odds, the percentages, the disaster of this season potentially for the Brooklyn Nets. But today, we get to talk about roster moves, and that's what we're most excited about post-All-Star.
Oh, Bojan Bogdanovic. We never knew ye. We literally never did. He never even came and played for the Nets, and he's already off the team. So that was that dream died hard. Although we kind of saw this one coming. Bojan ends up getting waived here. We knew that there was just a chance that this was going to happen. I think we kind of said this before the season started. We never really heard word one about him, right? Like usually with players like this, you'll get some kind of injury update or the team, we get these team PR reports and it'll say like, so-and-so's worked back to 5-on-5. We'll talk about that with Cam Thomas, all this stuff. They never even gave did they ever even give an injury report for him this year? I don't remember, except for just saying out. Like, I don't remember there being ever an injury report for him. It never seemed like he was close. It was salary fodder when they traded Mikal. Yeah. And that kind of all it ever was. And I don't know if that means it's kind of the end of his time here in the NBA and he'll go back to Europe or whatever, or their injuries, but it's not all that surprising that he never took the court. It was just like never talked about in a way that where you felt like it was really imminent at any point.
Yeah, I think they referred to him as a skin sack filled with broken bones and blood soup. There was nothing.
Man, I did not know where that was going, pal. Like I was like, whoa, we're about to hit the mute button here. And then it ended up.
Well, you got it. Yeah. You always want to see those jokes out. Sometimes it's a risk, but in the end, we landed the plane. And I like to think, perfectly. But there was no expectation that we ever thought that he was going to be a part of this team this season or even be healthy enough to be on the team this season or anything else. So it's unfortunate. But remember, once upon a time, he was a Brooklyn Net who did play basketball for the Nets many, many years ago. It comes in conjunction with a couple of moves. We'll talk a little bit more about Tyrese Martin. It's a nice story for him to get converted to a full contract. They're playing on two ways. But this also makes room for one Killian Hayes. And this came up. Fans when we did Fan Take Fridays, going back maybe a few weeks or a month ago, it was, hey, have you seen what Hayes has been up to? You go back and you look at his tip-off tournament and regular season numbers going down to the G League. Are you excited about 33, almost 34 minutes, 17 points, 47% from the field? Listen, buddy, you combine everything he's done at the G League level, 35% from beyond the arc, probably the most notable. Are we surprised by this? I know that I'm not. This makes all the sense. 28 games. This is it. Killian Hayes, you want to reclaim your NBA career. You have 28 games with the Brooklyn Nets and all the space in the world, as Doug Norrie would say, to explore the studio, so to speak.
Well, buddy, I'm going to do what I hate. I'm going to cherry pick some stats in Killian Hayes' favor here, because if you actually take out the tip-off tournament in the G League and just go regular season, it gets a lot stronger. And we've said a lot where at the G League level, you have to crush it. Like if you're going to have any hope in the NBA level, you have to crush the G League, because the G League is, an order of magnitude easier, just an easier run just in terms of the overall talent pool. It's there's just the players are worse. Like that's just so your numbers have to be way better in the G League than the kind of thing need to be eye popping, right? Just to think about sniffing the NBA. And frankly, Hayes' numbers in the regular season have kind of like been that. He's been 50% from the field, 40% from three, has gotten the free throw percentage up to 77%, which you love to see. I mean, all really good. And of all those, of the two, I would say the 40% from three and the free throw percentage, back out the field goal percentage because the shots are easier. Where the threes are going down and just standing at the free throw line, those shots are going in, right? Because that's talent independent, Like you're standing there by yourself, right? Like they don't intimidate you harder in the G League, or intimidate you less while you stand at the foul line.
LeBron's looking at you, as you try to take your free throw. That might get you a little.
Fair enough. I just meant like, yeah, okay. So, but the G League's not gonna they're not gonna have equal intimidation. That's really encouraging. It's really encouraging that the efficiency went way up, because that was the exact thing we said. It's like, hey, if the efficiency's in the dumpster in the G League, forget it. What's the point? There's no point. But if you're going to get sort of like hyper efficient in the G League, then it's a 10-day contract. We'll see where it goes. But but he showed those 13 games, he showed, okay, can hit the threes, can make some shots from the free throw line. Maybe some of this stuff is sorted out mechanics wise and in your head wise or whatever it is. I'm excited. We wanted this guy to play. Like these are just the kind of flyers we wanted Sean Marks to take. Post hype, something didn't work out, no risk. Like this is just the kind of guy. So yeah, I mean, it's only 10 days for now, but I'm here for it. I wish it happened sooner, but I can understand why it didn't.
Yeah, yes. I mean, there's just the order of operations over the course of the season. Maybe it's just the optics of it all when you go to bring him up. And then, of course, from a high level, which Killian Hayes was never fully this, but it's, swap out one non-shooter in Ben Simmons who could facilitate the crap out of the game for a guy that didn't necessarily shoot very well, but could facilitate the crap out of the game. Down there, the other stat is over 8 assists per game at the G League level. Now, it's 13 games, so the sample size is small. The other thing, when you talk about the 40% from beyond the arc, to your point, it really matters that it's 5.5 attempts per game. Sometimes when you get into the stats and you say, and I'll use the free throw shooting as the example, it's less than 2. So is under 2 free throw attempts per game. Can I trust those percentages over 13 games? Probably not. But can I trust over 5 attempts from beyond the arc and say, hey, he's maybe figured something out with his mechanics, or like you say, between the ears, which has been the case with a handful of players in the past for Brooklyn? Yeah, I'm willing to hang my hat pretty heavily on the idea that at least you can bring him up to the NBA level and think that can have value for you. If it was only a shot and a half from beyond the arc, again, I'd have a hard time. If you're talking 30 to 35 three-point attempts over 13 games in the G League, I got a really big NBA sample size. The other thing is, as you talked about when we had...
but real quick, before you go on, real quick, the numbers. I mean, 72 threes in the regular season for them so far. It's not nothing, right? It's not 100%. It's not a huge sample size, but I don't know. You start to normalize probably not too far out on this number of threes, right? I'm not sure what the rate normalization is on attempts, like where that end starts to go, but you'd have to think it's probably in the hundreds. I'm not I mean, I guess you can run hot a little bit, but you don't see it for really, really long stretches. Anyway, a guy who can shoot 40% over 70 shots, there's for sure something there. It's not 10, right? It's not 4 for 10. That's all I mean.
No, and by the way, if you go back and you look at it, when he was at his worst in Detroit on 286 three-point attempts, when he was shooting 28%, right? But that was the only year when he really spiked. He had 2 years that bookended 23-24 and his rookie campaign, where he only took 72 and 74 shots from beyond the arc. So take the sample size and be able to feel like it's getting in a better direction. That matters here. There's one area that I do want to get to that ties to his assist numbers at G League level and a potentially concerning stat at the NBA level. We'll see if we can go ahead and brush that to the side and put some hype behind the Nets 10-day point guard coming up here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, I'll tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, NBA action is just getting started. No better place to get it on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you place live bets throughout the games. Even if you miss the opening tip-off, you want to bet in the fourth quarter comeback, no problem. You can stay in the action. You're looking for a bigger payout, you combine a bunch of those bets together for a same-game parlay. Love using that FanDuel live betting feature. The Nets this year, if you've just been betting on the Nets all year, you've made money. There's no other way around it. They've actually crushed against the spread. It keeps every moment of the game exciting. Maybe you're backing the Nets. Maybe you're just doing an emotional hedge. Whatever it is, the app's super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Well, all right. So as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about roster moves, bye-bye Bojan Bogdanovic, hello Killian Hayes, up to the NBA level, 10-day contract. When we talk about, I want to ask if you think he makes it all the way through the remainder of the season at the Brooklyn Nets level. But when we talk about his stats, and I just isolated the regular season, although I'll do the full spectrum because it's 13 games regular season. You throw in the tip-off tournament, and that gets you up to 28 games. So it does expand the sample size, and if we want to be reasonable about it, maybe that actually helps us kind of clarify, right? As you said, cherry pick. We back out the 15 games in the tip-off tournament. Well, then I can paint an even stronger picture. Still 35% from deep, still 47% from the field. The assist numbers end up averaging out to 7.7, almost 8 assists per game. The one spot that I would probably have, I'll probably have an eye on is over 2 steals per game as well, but also like well over 3 turnovers per game. I'm a little curious because the plus minus when you add in the tip-off tournament is actually a net negative. If you just do the regular season, he's a positive 6.2. The turnovers are still 3.4. He had more turnovers in those 13 regular season games than he did when you combine them on average with the tip-off tournament. I am curious about that part of it. Having over 3 turnovers at the G League level, can it be with who you're playing with, right? And expectations, is the guy in the right spot when you're trying to make those passes? Do you care a little bit less about some risky, opportunities and whether or not it's going to make your stats look bad? Possibly. But he will need to be the guy that both ends here. He needs to be able to be a player that gives you 7-8 assists a game and also mitigates the turnover risk, because otherwise it does wash it out. Like those are very, those are very scale balancing kind of numbers if you can't keep a 2-to-1, nearly 3-to-1 kind of ratio to be a high level point guard player.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see, the Jordi Fernandez system doesn't lend itself. It lends itself to turnovers, but there's like so much movement. The point guard actually gets put in pretty advantageous spots.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually thinking that short of just totally like dumpstering this thing, I think he actually is being put in a pretty good spot here with the way they run like sort of a motion style offense with a lot of passes coming like pretty close together, like some DHO stuff, or just like running through dribble handoff stuff through screens and just trying to find shooters. Maybe that's just me kind of wishing and hoping that it's going to happen, but I actually feel like it's going to go okay. I think that he's stepping into a system, which
about this, to be honest with you.
I'm probably like way too optimistic. I think I just think he's going to be good. I don't know I don't really know what I'm basing that on, but I do think that
13 games at the G League level where the numbers really look strong. And
we've also just seen some like random guys be okay here. Like Trendon Watford's like essentially their backup point guard. Like Tosan's like half a point guard. Like they just need another guard. I just think that like anyone who can effectively dribble on the NBA level, which he can do, is going to be put in an okay spot, all things considered. So I actually think it would be hard for him to look horrible. I guess like that's more of what I'm saying. I think that the way the Nets are set up right now, I think they're set up amazingly so, considering that the talent is just really not at the level of most other teams. I do think the other pieces kind of fall into place for him to be okay here. And I think that there's for sure other systems that it would be easier to sort of like, have it look bad. I'm just kind of stumbling for my words here. Like there's other systems where you put them in there, it'd be a little harder. Like if you have like an ISO heavy kind of system, or if like it was so point guard dominant that it was like going to have run the whole show. And if it wasn't happening, he's just gonna be put into these weird situations. That's like not the way the Nets run it. Like these guys have been okay. Like D'Lo's looked decent in this situation. Again, Trendon Watford's playing backup point guard and it hasn't looked horrible. So I just think that anyone with enough requisite talent and sort of wherewithal for the game is probably going to look okay. Is it going to just blow out of the box? It's also harder to see it at that end too. But I just think like the floor raising element of the way they're running their offense feels like he's being put in a pretty good spot. And we'll see. I just don't think he's gonna be like a super high turnover guy. I just think that's kind of the way they run their offense.
And I know this isn't 1-to-1, so obviously take it with the spirit it's intended, but 52 games, 32 starts, averaging 23 minutes a night, shooting 37% from the field, shooting 29 from beyond the arc, and having some of his own 78%, but certainly a dip from the year prior, 78% from the line. That's Keon Johnson. And Keon Johnson's not been a point guard for them. The ball's been put in his hands sometimes. Once they got D'Angelo Russell, they started to figure it all out. When Ben Simmons was gone, they started, as you mentioned, go to Trendon Watford. But when you're talking about whose minutes are you going to see take a big dip here if Killian Hayes is going to play and potentially play successfully, it's going to be a guy that like hasn't been terrible to watch. Been very streaky from a shooting standpoint, but he's a former first-round pick. You wonder if he could get it done. And I think while looking back at Keon Johnson and saying this is the area he's never been able to find consistency, he still hasn't had that. But overall, Keon Johnson, you'd look and say, yeah, it's been okay. And I think that's kind of the floor that I set for Killian Hayes coming in. Start eating away at some minutes here. Start getting the ball in your hands a little bit more and see if you can just methodically kind of find your way in this offense. The nice thing for him, too, I would say, as the Brooklyn Nets are one or the lowest pace team. I think they're either last or, dead last or second to last in pace of play. I think that that kind of helps him. Having a slower offensive style is not going to come in here and make it be that he needs to Ben Simmons these defensive rebounds and break this team out and be active quickly in transition. I'll be fascinated to watch how Jordi Fernandez looks at utilizing Killian Hayes to maybe incrementally build him up at the NBA level. Because as good as it's been in those 13 games, or even the 28 overall G League, it's not the NBA. The last taste of him at the NBA were a disaster. So you have to make sure that Killian Hayes comes in with the confidence that he can play at the NBA level. That is still the question mark here. I think he'll do it, but I find that really fascinating from a coaching standpoint. How do you get this player to be the best version of himself as he tries to reclaim his career?
Yes, you're right. They're the second slowest team in the league, only to Miami. That's by design. They don't push the pace at all.
This is the
right
style,
now.
Right.
Right. And usually too, if you're, it's not like the pace is super increased when the defense has gotten better too. Sometimes you'll see the defense improve, and then because that means you're just generating turnovers or you're just generating stops. So it's easier to get out and push the pace, some hit aheads. They don't do any of that. So they're walking the ball off the court almost all the time. Again, by design.
Again, with Tosan,
just kind
of with
exactly.
Don't have the personnel.
It's not like they have. Right, there's not a bunch of Usain Bolts running all around here, just kind of sprinting all over the court. I mean, they need to slow it down because they're, the football equivalent of hey, we need to run, pass, punt, and then hope that we win 3-0. Right, that's kind of
of offenses in the NBA here, right? Hey, let's
totally
methodically plod.
We don't need to speed anything up here. If anything, we need to limit the possessions because scoring for us is very difficult, right? Yeah. Scoring is very, very difficult for the Nets. They just do not have any offensive firepower at all. They've been, again, one of the worst offenses in the whole league. They've just been one of the best defenses in the league over the last 6 or 10 games or whatever. But so you have to think he kind of helps from that standpoint, just from running half court sets, which he should be able to do. He's also not a pace pusher. He's half court set. Let's get into the pick and roll. He has good court vision, and maybe he can do some pick and roll stuff with these bigs. He has length, as a point guard. There is length, and he's got a good wingspan, and so it should work with their personnel. And yes, I agree with you. He's not going to come in there Russell Westbrook style and try to just, get past everybody in the court. The Nets don't have any guys like that. Simmons was kind of it, but not really, because he never wanted to go all the way to the rim. But after him, there's nobody. There's not a single guy on this team that wants to push the pace.
Almost 6'5", 6'8" wingspan, 23 years old. If this guy doesn't fold right into the mold of what the Brooklyn Nets are about this season, totally. I don't know who does, right? Former first-round pick. Didn't quite live up to the hype. Has some problems. It couldn't be scripted any better for the Brooklyn Nets to say, yeah, great. And by the way, while this may be really hard for him to put himself in any other position as far as his NBA future, this is a team that will afford you every opportunity to go out there and figure it out. You're not going to have an off night and say, oh, I don't know if we could risk another bad game here. We could really lose one on a Tuesday night if Killian Hayes struggles. Okay. Like I said before, 32 starts for Keon Johnson. And there's never been a time when he's been jacking up and bricking threes that we ever had a doubt he was going to get his minutes the very next game, because that's what this roster currently is. Coming up here in a second, there's an interesting tie-in with the potential as Cam Thomas gets to 5-on-5 practices for there to be a really fun backcourt dynamic down the stretch of this season. Where do we think this team can go if Thomas returns, if Hayes keeps hot shooting from G League? We'll do that to close things out here in just one moment. All right, tying a pretty little bow in today's Locked On Nets episode. I almost lost my breath there at the end of the last segment, but that's okay. We think
podcasting's hard work. No one's gonna blame you if you just get a little flustered, a little out of breath. Take a break, settle down. As my wife says in our yoga practice, find your breath. Head over heart over pelvis. This is what we're doing here. Center yourself. Let's go.
When's the portion of the podcast when we take a knee and we just put the towel over the head and we just cool off on the sidelines for a minute? We do have Jordi Fernandez saying that Cam Thomas is up to 5-on-5. And then he finished that off with, so we'll see what happens next. There was no confirmation of what's coming here. very first question on it before we get into the on-off numbers with him. Do you think that the Brooklyn Nets are playing it coy with Cam Thomas and his return back here? We know they've won more games than we anticipated and all that stuff, but this would be a needle mover for a team that won 6 out of their last 7 and could maybe continue to surprise some teams if they just had more offensive firepower. Like, that is Cam Thomas, and there's nobody else on this roster that you would look and circle and say, oh, he can be a 25 plus, a night guy kind of guy and dominate games and take over games that way.
Well, okay. On the one hand, like, us, we've never had a clue what the Nets plan with Cam Thomas is from like the day that he got drafted. So I've long since given up thinking about trying to understand what the plan is with Cam Thomas.
But that said, lay out what you think the plan is, just so we have it documented. Well,
dude, we threw our hands up and shrugged our shoulders at this years ago. So
really serious. It has been.
I mean, we're on like year
2 plus 3 years of us always saying like, here's what I think, and going, now let me just qualify this. We never have any concept of what's going to happen.
No idea, because just
and everyone's a liar who thinks that they do. Everyone has been a liar who has said with conviction what it's going to be.
Yeah. By the way, not saying what they think Cam Thomas can be, just saying what they think the team's plan with him is. That's all. Like, we've been long confused about what the plan is. Now, that being said, I don't think they would like willingly hold a player out longer than if this is what you're asking. I don't think they would willingly hold a player out longer than possible just because it does something. Like, they haven't also made really many moves like this. Among all like other tanking teams, they've rested their players seemingly considerably less. Like, if you watch the Jazz, I mean, go do the Jazz minutes every other night. I mean, these guys sit every other game, right? Like, so the Hornets sit LaMelo every other game. The Nets really haven't done that. The guys have either been injured or just played. And so maybe they don't max out minutes, but they play. And again, go to the other teams in the league. These teams are dumpster fires with the minutes. And you want the anti-tanking version of this? Good. That's better for the fans. Like, it's better to see the players play. Like, watching a bunch of scrubs come in every other game for the Jazz sucks. But with Cam Thomas, I don't think they're like willingly going to hold someone out longer than possible. It's clear that, like, would they be better with Cam Thomas? Obviously he'd be instantly the best scorer in the team. That's like not some kind of just, knowing ball situation here. Like, that's obvious. Like, he would be by, again, an order of magnitude better scorer than anybody else they have, because he's one of the best scorer, like pure for, pound for pound, just scorers in the whole game when he plays. And they've been better with him on the court this year. It's been all negative with him, but it's been better with him around by a couple of points net rating wise to the season. So I don't think they're playing a coy. I think it's just he's still hurt and just like he's whatever reason struggling to get back. But the timelines are weird and I don't really know. But I don't think it's let's hold them out because we're tanking situation. They just haven't done that with anybody else, and so I just don't know why. If that's what you were suggesting, I don't think that's just what they've been. They haven't done that with anybody else.
No, and I agree with you. Like, frustratingly for some fans, right, to not maybe be holding guys out more, to not maybe be reducing the minutes of certain key players in key situations. Instead, once they're ready, they do get back out there, and I think it probably kind of matters, man. Like, he's only played 17 games, 19 games, 17 started. Yeah. Like, I mean, at some point here, not that you're not worried, but the other side of it is being like, so this dude just basically missed the entire year with like non-serious injuries. Just, the hammies are tight. The ankles, like it's not like he never came out and said like, oh no, extended loss here. Maybe gonna need a surgery, minor or otherwise. It's just been very vague and he hasn't seen the court. You're down to the last 28. If he came in now and played every single game, you'd still be talking about less than 50% of the games this year. So that certainly is interesting to me just from his long-term future. And by the way, contract year for him too, right? Kind of stumbles into a luck pot here for the Brooklyn Nets. Oh, we know you're talented, baby. The other side is, though, you missed almost the entire year. We're going to give you, we're going to do right by you and give you a nice 4-year contract worth about $12.5 million. AAV. Well,
we've said that this is a repeated theme over the course of the year, since basically the beginning of the year, is that we said it from the beginning, and we probably end up saying like some version of this once every week or two, is that we're going to come out of this season. No one's going to have learned anything new about Cam Thomas. Like we said at the very beginning, we said, and that's not a good or a bad or indifferent. It's just like whatever you thought, whatever your opinion was of Cam Thomas, day 0 this year, day 150 or whatever we're on, or like it's going to be the exact same. Like no one's opinion for good or bad is going to change about Cam Thomas. Now I thought it would be slightly different. I just thought he would put up a bunch of points on like decent efficiency, and then the team would stink, and whatever you thought about him, good or bad, would be proven right. If you thought he was the best scorer ever, you'd be proven right because he would score a bunch. And if you thought it was going to be like empty calorie stuff, you'd also be proven right because it would be like somewhat empty calories. Now, it hasn't worked out that way. It's just been a different thing where he just hasn't played at all. So again, everyone's opinion day 0 is going to be the opinion now. And we're going to, and dude, I mean, you know us, we said this back and we're like, here's what's going to happen. The season's going to end. You know, or you already know what I'm going to say. The season's going to end and he's going to be up for a contract and no one's going to have any clue like what they think about him. No one's going to have a clue. No one's going to have a clue until.
How do you assess the value of Cam Thomas?
And here's when we'll have a clue. When something happens, or either he signs a contract or he doesn't. I think it'll extend, but that's when we'll know. And then, by the way, the other hilarious thing is, I'm calling this one right now too. He's going to sign some weird number contract, and then you're really still going to have no idea. Like it's going to be some weird number.
It won't confirm or deny.
It's like not going to be a 20 million. Yeah, watch it just like not be like a 20 millioner kind of thing, like Claxton's or Cam Johnson's. It's like some in between number,
right?
And then we're just going to be like, well, I don't know.
Like a clever player option on the back end of it somewhere, right? Like
exactly. Yeah, I'm calling it. We haven't got this is the new piece. This is the new chapter in the book. The new chapter is the contract's not going to tell us anything either. And that's going to be just another great talking point because it'll be like 12.5 million. It's like, well, it's like more than one thing, but like it's not exactly like franchise thing. And it's like maybe kind of like right at the right number where you can trade it. Like it's going to be all these other questions.
Use it for a trade if they needed to. Good salary match. Still young.
Totally. Yeah. So that's the new thing. That's calling that right now. That's going to happen. It's not there'll be additional non-clarity once the season ends and he signs a new contract.
For some more lack of clarity, he has been off the court for 1,993 minutes this season. The team has had a net negative 6.82, a 107.58 offensive, a 114.40 defensive rating. With him on the court, not as bad, but as Doug mentioned, still negative. Net rating -9.1, offensive rating 116.67, so like significantly better there, but 121.58 on the defensive end. The thing that I find interesting about it is that like the numbers aren't starkly different on the defensive end of the floor for the Brooklyn Nets when Cam Thomas is on the floor. So offensively, you know it's going to be better. Almost 2.5% better overall from the field. 5% nearly better from beyond the arc. But the opposition, it's under 2%, like 2% better from the field. They're actually worse from beyond the arc. So it's like, fluky numbers there. This is where I find it fascinating about if he comes back this season with the way the team's been playing defensively. Like you start to mix all this stuff together and you go, right, if Cam Thomas could come back and play 20 games this year where he's just focused on the offense and Killian Hayes just in the mix, facilitating and playing defense because that's his thing, and Keon Johnson gets to become a supplemental guy who's a scrappy defender, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden you can paint a picture where, listen, take the concerns about wins and losses in the tank off the table because you have to just move past that. Doug did a whole solo episode about it. We have to move beyond it for the rest of this year.
I'm over it. I'm officially over it. Like, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm not complaining about it anymore.
Have to be done with it. So that means, though, we could get this world where, like, for 20 games or so, we see a group of guys that are all 24 and younger, like mixing it up and trying to figure out some rhythms and maybe giving us some exciting games. Like, and it's different if it's Cam Thomas as a part of it and maybe Killian Hayes, as opposed to when we talk about a Tyrese Martin who got converted to, a full contract, right? Those guys are fun stories, even Tosan maybe. It's different if you see it with a guy like Cam Thomas and maybe a couple of these other players, Nicholas Claxton, even as he's had a rough season. That can actually have value beyond this year, as opposed to when we talk about some feel-good stories that maybe don't carry over beyond.
Yeah, sorry, slight extended pause there because something buzzed there in the background for me. Okay, yeah, no, I agree with you that it's I want him to play. I want to be clear on him. I want him to like take over some of the offense. I want him to look like sort of play sort of like quasi point guard at times, or just sort of be an offensive engine. And it would be considerably better to watch him play with these guys, and also to watch him for sure get dialed into the defensive end because every guy has bought in on this. Every guy has bought. Every guy in this team has bought it on this.
I know it's stupid. The 19 games, 17 starts. We said early in the year, like I give us a pat on the back for this. That it was noticeable his engagement on the defensive end under Jordi Fernandez, unlike any time that we've seen him before.
Because I think Jordi will sit these guys if they don't play. Like if they're not dialed in on defense, I think you just get sat. I don't think that anyone's safe here. I don't think that anyone is safe from not giving their all defensively because they will just put another guy in. So not like Cam Thomas needs that. I'm just saying that every guy's been like that, so you would just assume he would be too, right? So, I just think that that's an exciting prospect. And just to go back to what I said at the beginning, I think officially have moved past the complaining. At least I have. I've been the biggest perpetrator of this, of like, being annoyed by just not spiking these lottery odds. It's over. It's done with. They didn't do it.
Yeah, there's no more. And by the way, and this goes both ways because they play the Cavs on Thursday night, and I assume they're probably going to get blown out. Like, that's my theory. And I'm not going to come in and say, well, it's one more back in the right direction. Maybe
it's over. It's over.
Way,
like they're gonna land where they land.
Yep.
Only just gonna report it warmly and accurately where the odds are from now on. I'm gonna do my, and you can hold me to this. I'm just gonna do my very hardest to like not be annoyed by where they are, because it's over. And it's and to everyone's credit that has given me a hard time about this, it's this very silly thing to go to root for, to complain about day in and day out. So anyway, there you go, a little self-reflection. We're gonna get out of here. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets wherever you listen to the podcast. Make sure you subscribe over on YouTube as well. Leave a comment. I'm reading all those comments. I got in there and mixed it up with a couple of people on the comment section over there. Yeah. What best way for me to comment on something over on YouTube? Say something like kind of like mean, because I'll say something sarcastic back. That's my bread and butter. So just, you want to make a comment? Yeah, some people over there know my triggers. Yeah, leave a comment over on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe first.
This one comes care of Webster's Dictionary. A device that is used to heat and pressure to clean and sanitize surfaces by combining. Oh boy, we got to start it over. Wow, guys, and I want to tell you this straight to camera. This has been one of our best episodes, and they're all gems, but I was really proud of this one up until the point that I blew what was going to be a great off-camera reference. It's a device that uses heat and pressure to clean and sanitize surfaces, combining tap water that creates steam that can kill bacteria and other microorganisms. That's a steam cleaner. And that's what's
well, Adam's throwing that one of the great all-time great parrots, because I was looking up steam cleaners. Also, I want to say one more thing before we get out of here. I never end like this. I am looking for this. Someone came up with this great term. I'll get it for the next episode. It's on Twitter. Okay. They came up with a great term instead of tanking. We're going to rebrand tanking next episode. And just remind me, I tried to fly to find the bookmark that I had done it. So we'll do it tomorrow. This is to keep me honest about it. In the meantime, like Adam said, one of the all-time great poets. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
bit of a fizzle. Basketball.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.